All right, today we're talking about one of the most important literary figures of the 14th century, a real giant in his day. But here's the thing, he's been almost completely forgotten, living in the shadow of his super famous friend. We're talking, of course, about John Gower.
So when I say the name Geoffrey Chaucer, the guy who wrote the Canterbury Tales, what pops into your head? I'm guessing it's not his close personal friend, a man who was, you could totally argue, his literary equal. And that is the mystery we're getting into today.
And look at this. This timeline really drops Gower right into the middle of the literary Big Bang. I mean, his life almost perfectly lines up with Chaucer's, with William Langland's, and even with the super talented but anonymous Pearl poet. He wasn't just watching from the sidelines, folks. He was a major player, right at the birth of English literature.
Okay, so here's our game plan for bringing his story to light. We'll kick things off with his famous friendship, then get into his mind-blowing talent with languages. From there, we'll dive deep into his 3 biggest works, and we'll wrap it all up by tackling that huge question: why is this guy so forgotten?
All right, first things first, let's really pin down Gower's place in history. It's so important to get this. He wasn't just some guy who lived at the same time as Chaucer. They were actual friends. They ran in the same circles, they talked about the same big ideas, they were part of the same world. But here's the thing, Gower was way more than just Chaucer's buddy. This is where he really carves out his own space. I mean, he pulled off something that was just, wow, almost unheard of. It's like a literary triathlon, and it shows off his incredible brain power and range.
Yeah, you heard that right. He didn't just write one epic poem, he wrote 3 of them. 3 massive epic poems. And get this, he wrote each one in a different language: French, Latin, and English. The 3 big literary languages at the time. This wasn't him just trying to look smart. No, it was a really intentional move to speak to different audiences and play in different literary sandboxes. The ambition alone is just staggering.
So here they are, the 3 pillars of his entire career. You've got his French poem, the Mirour, then his Latin work, the Vox Clamantis, and finally his English masterpiece, the Confessio Amantis. Each one is a complete universe.
Okay, let's dive into the first one, his French poem. It's called Mirour de l'homme, which means the mirror of mankind, and this was probably his first big major work.
And just look at the stats on this thing. We are talking almost 30,000 lines of poetry. In Anglo-Norman French, no less. And the whole thing is focused on one giant theme: mankind's journey to salvation. It is just a monumental piece of writing.
So what's it about? Well, it's this huge allegory. Picture this: the devil and sin team up and have 7 daughters. You might have heard of them: pride, envy, wrath. Yup, the 7 deadly sins. So to fight back, God sends down 7 virtues. It's this epic cosmic battle for the soul of every person because Gower believed humanity was basically tainted and really needed to repent. And here's a kind of sad, frustrating twist. The very end of this gigantic poem, it's been lost. We don't have it.
All right, after French, Gower switched gears to Latin. He writes this poem called Vox Clamantis. That translates to a voice crying out. And believe me, he had a lot to cry out about when he looked at the world.
Now this one's a bit shorter, but it packs just as much punch. We're still talking over 10,000 lines. And this is where you really see Gower as a political commentator. He's not just writing about abstract ideas, he's writing about the headlines. He uses this poem to directly take on the state of English society, and he zooms right in on the huge, shocking event of his day, the Peasants Rebellion of 1381.
The poem's kind of split in 2. The first book is this wild, nightmarish dream sequence about the rebellion itself. It's vivid and pretty terrifying. Then, for the rest of the poem, it shifts into what scholars call an estate satire. Basically, he goes through every single social class, the church, the nobles, the common folk, you name it, and just lists all the ways they're corrupt and falling apart. No one gets a pass.
And that brings us to the grand finale, the 3rd pillar, the one he's actually most famous for, written in his own language, Middle English. It's called the Confessio Amantis, which means the lover's confession.
This is the big one, his longest poem, a whopping 33,000 lines, and it's set up as a frame story. You know, where there's one main story that holds a bunch of smaller stories inside it. The main story is about this old guy who's hopelessly in love, and he's confessing all his romantic mistakes to a priest of Venus, the goddess of love. So in response, the priest tells him all these stories, a lot of them borrowed from classical writers like Ovid, to teach him lessons about love and morality.
Okay, now this is where the story gets juicy. There is some serious political drama baked into this poem. So Gower claims that King Richard II himself asked him to write it, and the first version, which came out in 1390, is full of stuff praising the king. But then, just 2 years later, Gower goes back, rewrites parts of it, and get this. He takes out all the praise for Richard. And who does he dedicate the new version to? Richard's cousin and biggest rival, Henry Bolingbroke. You know, the guy who would later overthrow him and become King Henry IV. Talk about a political power move. It shows Gower was paying very close attention and knew which way the wind was blowing.
So when you step back and look at all three of these massive works together, you really see what he was doing. With French, he was looking inward, at the individual's soul. With Latin, he looked outward, at the soul of his whole society. And with English, he used these fantastic stories about love to explore human morality. So, yeah, 3 different languages, 3 totally different approaches, but they're all driven by this one powerful, unifying moral vision.
So, let's bring it all home. What's the big takeaway here? Why should you and I care about this poet who's been playing second fiddle to Chaucer for more than 600 years?
Because Gower wasn't just a storyteller. He was trying to build a moral compass for his time, which was a really chaotic and changing world. He was using his incredible talent with words to act like a doctor, diagnosing the sicknesses he saw in people, in politics, and in the whole social system.
And really, that's the whole key to unlocking Gower. It's right there in that quote from our source. The whole point is that these 3 huge, impressive poems are all tied together. They are united by common moral and political themes. That was his mission, his life's work.
And that leaves us with the one big nagging question, doesn't it? If John Gower was this multilingual genius, this fearless social critic, this amazing storyteller, and a personal friend of the most famous author of the era, then why do we all know Chaucer's name while Gower is basically a trivia answer? Now that is something to chew on.